Today, I had the privilege of briefing President Trump on my recent visit to Pyongyang, North Korea. I'd like to thank President Trump, the Vice President, and his wonderful national security team, including my close friend, General McMaster. I explained to President Trump that his leadership and his maximum pressure policy, together with international solidarity, brought us to this juncture. I expressed President Moon Jae-in's personal gratitude for President Trump's leadership. I told President Trump that in our meeting, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said he is committed to denuclearization. Kim pledged that North Korea will refrain from any further nuclear or missile tests. He understands that the routine joint military exercises between the Republic of Korea and the United States must continue. And he expressed his eagerness to meet President Trump as soon as possible. President Trump appreciated the briefing and said he would meet Kim Jong-un by May to achieve permanent denuclearization. The Republic of Korea, along with the United States, Japan, and our many partners around the world, remain fully and resolutely committed to the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Along with President Trump, we are optimistic about continuing a diplomatic process to test the possibility of a peaceful resolution. The Republic of Korea, the United States, and our partners stand together in insisting that we not repeat the mistakes of the past, and that the pressure will continue until North Korea matches its words with concrete actions. Thank you.
How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brown Logan, and today I bring you some great news from the Korean Peninsula, also from the Trump administration. You just saw what I played before I started talking right here. That was a South Korean National Security Advisor, Chung Eui-yong. Hopefully I said his name correctly. I'm not Korean, obviously, but this is great news. This is fantastic news. We're going to get into this article to see a little bit more information, but I've been saying this the whole time. I knew it was a tactic that Trump was employing. People said that, oh, Trump is just provoking Kim Jong-un into a nuclear war. We're going to have World War VIII. We're going to go right past 3, 4, 5, etc. You know, all this doom and gloom talking about it's a measuring contest, a button on the desk, the whole 9 yards. It turns out that what he did was working. The man specifically said what Trump was doing was working, and I knew that's what it was going to be from the beginning. We don't know exactly how the talks are going to go, but at least we're right here having the talk. This is further than we've come in years past. There have been no talks. There has been no communication. Already Trump in the first year and change is doing more than Obama did as far as foreign relations in his whole 8 years, 2 terms. But before I go any further, let's get into the article to see exactly what's going on here. And you see the headline over my shoulder. North Korea asks for direct nuclear talks and Trump agrees. And the article reads, North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has invited President Trump to meet for negotiations over its nuclear program, an audacious diplomatic overture that will bring together 2 strong-willed, idiosyncratic leaders who have traded threats of war. Now, I'm reading, I think this is the New York Times, so if you see any kind of liberal bias, that's why. The White House said that Mr. Trump had accepted the invitation, and Chung Eui-yong, a South Korean official who conveyed it, told reporters that the president would meet with Mr. Kim within 2 months. Quote, he expressed his eagerness to meet President Trump as soon as possible, Mr. Chung said at the White House on Thursday evening after meeting the president. Mr. Trump, he said, agreed to meet Kim Jong-un by May to achieve permanent denuclearization, which is a big deal because North Korea is in a very sensitive spot. It could mean doom for them and or the rest of the world, because right where they are, you know, talk about a little bit of geography here. You have Russia on their border, China on their border, South Korea on their border. You also have Japan right off the coast. They're within range of the Philippines, Guam, etc. It's a very sensitive location. They're kind of far from the Philippines, but Guam is not really that far, maybe even Hawaii. But I digress. Let's keep going with the article. The president expressed his optimism about the meeting in a post on Twitter, saying that Mr. Kim had, quote, talked about denuclearization with the South Korean representatives, not just a freeze. So that means rather than just stopping the program for a period of time, he's going to stop it altogether completely, which is what we want to get done here. Also, the missile testing by North Korea during this period of time, Mr. Trump added, great progress being made, but sanctions will remain until an agreement is reached, meeting being planned. So there's no assumptions being made here. You can't just assume that Kim Jong-un is trying to get out of sanctions and is going to do whatever he wants to do after the sanctions have been lifted. We're going to keep everything in place right now until we get a real agreement. And if the agreement is broken, there's going to be some severe consequences. I think that North Korea has more pressing issues at hand than trying to, be playing with nuclear weapons. Maybe the nuclear talk is way for them to try to get some financial aid, because people in North Korea, the average citizen, many of them are starving right now, but that's a different story. Mr. Chung, whose talks with Mr. Kim on Monday in Pyongyang resulted in the invitation, noted that the North Korean leader said he understood that the joint military exercise with the United States and South Korea would go ahead as scheduled after the end of the Paralympic Games this month. For Mr. Trump, a meeting with Mr. Kim, a leader he has threatened with fire and fury and has derided as Little Rocket Man, is a breathtaking gamble. No sitting American president has ever met a North Korean leader, and Mr. Trump himself has repeatedly vowed that he would not commit the error of his predecessors by being drawn into a protracted negotiation in which North Korea extracted concessions from the U.S. but held on to key elements of its nuclear program. Now, that's a big deal right there, that nobody else has sat down with the North Korean leader to discuss anything. Trump would be the first. So I have optimism that this will go well. Meeting Mr. Kim now rather than at the end of the negotiation when the United States would presumably have extracted concessions from North Korea is an enormous gesture by the president, but Mr. Trump and Mr. Kim share a penchant for bold, dramatic moves, and their personal participation in the negotiation could take it in unexpected directions. The announcement itself was delivered in an improvisational style that belied its historic significance. Mr. Trump himself teased the news, popping into the White House briefing room shortly after 5 p.m. to tell reporters that South Korea will make a major announcement at 7. The announcement capped another day of swirling drama at the White House, in which the president defied his own party by announcing sweeping tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, sought to ignore a mushrooming scandal over a pornographic film actress. Okay, we're getting kind of into the weeds here. Of course, I would expect this on the New York Times. That's pretty much what they do. You're talking about Stormy Daniels. What's that got to do with North Korea? Nothing at all. But let's keep going. White House officials had expected to deliberate for several days over how to respond to North Korea's proposal for direct talks between the countries, which South Korean officials had first conveyed by telephone this week. But Mr. Kim's offer of a leader-to-leader meeting accelerated, if not upended, the administration's plans. Now, I'm a big fan of the meeting of the two people. It's going to be secure as secure can be. There's going to be no poisoning of anybody, and none of that's going to happen. And even if it did, it would just spell doom for the whole country, North Korea, not just Kim Jong-un or the person that is responsible for any kind of threats against the president. Embarking on a high-level negotiation will pose a stiff challenge to the administration, which has built its North Korea policy around imposing crippling sanctions backed by the threat of military action. People briefed by the administration said it had done little planning for how a negotiation with North Korea would unfold. The State Department's chief North Korea negotiator, Joseph Yoon, recently announced his departure from the Foreign Service. The White House also scotched a plan to nominate another experienced negotiator, Victor Cha, as ambassador to Seoul. Okay, this is a lengthy article for no reason. I feel like the article is long because they're trying to just serve you more ads, because a lot of it's just unnecessary information that's going towards the actual point. I'm going to go ahead and skip to the end and see how they cap it off here. Okay. Sorry for the ad right here, but hey, I can't control it. It seemed that the only thing changed was Mr. Kim's invitation to meet Mr. Trump himself. The president's deal-making skills, one of his aides said on Thursday, could produce an outcome different from previous rounds of diplomacy, which have always ended in failure and disappointment. The highest level American official to meet with the North Korean leader was Secretary of State Madeleine K. Albright, who visited Pyongyang in 2000 near the end of the Clinton administration. Dr. Albright had planned to arrange a visit by President Bill Clinton, but it fell apart when Kim Jong-un, the father of the current leader, would not agree to a missile deal in advance. He wanted to negotiate it face-to-face with the president. Mr. Clinton decided not to take the risk, skipped the trip, and used his last weeks in office to make a race for Middle East peace instead. Okay, there's a correction here, and that was on March 8th. That was yesterday. It says an earlier version of this article misstated that the country with which the United States will take part in joint military exercises, it is South Korea, not North Korea. That's a pretty big distinction to make there, don't you think? Yeah, there's not too much more in this article. New York Times, very liberal. It is what it is. At the end of the day, all the talk about Trump doing things the wrong way, trying to provoke North Korea, trying to poke the bear, talking about all this, whatever measuring. I'm not going to say the words, but you know what I'm talking about. My button is bigger than your button talk. All those naysayers seem to have egg on their face right now because obviously something that he's doing has worked. The maximum pressure thing that my man said earlier before I started talking, that's right on point. When you exert maximum pressure, when you don't relent, when you show strength, to some people you may laugh at it and say, oh, he's just making fun, he's playing the game, he's being a buffoon. Obviously what he was doing was working. I don't see how anybody could say that it didn't, because the proof is in the pudding. It's right here in front of your face. All you got to do is just look and see. As I close, I want to say this. I think this is a good step forward for diplomacy in that region, in North Korea, the Korea Peninsula. Hopefully the end result of this is eventual reunification. That's what I hope, because, I think they could be a prosperous country. China may not want that, actually, because North Korea provides us a buffer from South Korea, because they don't want American culture coming from the South Korean peninsula, because we pretty much, I don't want to say control, but we pretty much administrate that island. We have a military there. They don't want the Americans that close to them. They want to have that buffer zone. I think the same thing goes with Russia, because Russia also is right there at the northern border. So that might be something that they don't want. But I think overall for the Korean people, it'd probably be the best thing. You got one or two options, in my humble opinion. Either North Korea remains sovereign and kind of like Switzerland, kind of, not really on one side or the other, or they go with China, which will probably happen eventually. They'll get annexed by China, or they become part of Korea as one whole country. You saw some of that at the Olympics, where they came out under the one Korean banner, the one flag. It was a white flag that had the peninsula of Korea in the center, and they all came out together, north and south. That might be what will happen in the future, but as of right now, it's a lot of differences in the cultures, even the language and nutrition, the size of people. It's the same people, but being separated for a long time like that and being under different governments has really changed the culture and the people in both places. But like I said, we're doing a good thing here by getting some diplomacy going forward, and I think Trump is to thank for at least part of it. So what do you think? Do you think that Trump is to thank here, that he should get a lot of the credit for what's happened? Do you think he should get no credit? Is this a thing that South Korea did on their own without any kind of American influence? Whatever your comments are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.